I am very, very excited. We have Lama Rod Owens. He came to Cambridge to study at the Harvard Divinity School. He is a practitioner and also a mentor, a spiritual teacher. And if you go onto his website, he also describes himself as a special friend to those who are seeking to learn more about Buddhism. And I also think very, very interesting, not just having been taught in the Tibetan in Tibetan Buddhism, but also is branching out in different ways to explore racial healing and social justice, and also a form of Buddhist ministry, which I think is really interesting because in my experience, when I think of Buddhism, I think of, very classic esoteric on the top of a mountain and ministry being involved with other faiths. So I'm excited to bring Lama Rod so we can talk to him a little bit more onto tonight's show. So without further ado, Rod, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Café.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, how are you today?
I'm living the dream.
Nice.
So basically I'm here tonight with you and I'm excited.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with Buddhism and what do you do as a teacher?
I do many things as a teacher. I identify as a Buddhist minister. So I'm trained not only in providing spiritual instructions, meditation instructions, guidance in Buddhist philosophy, practices and techniques, but also in chaplaincy work. I am very committed to issues of social justice, to inclusivity work, diversity work. So essentially my role is to hopefully model an engaged and spiritually invested way of living.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And in this area, this Cambridge area, the practitioners you meet, are there other Buddhists of color? Or I confess, before I met you, I never met a Black Lama. So are you within a community that's diverse, or have you built that along the way?
I'm the first Black Lama I ever met. I'm not the only Black Lama that's ever appeared. There are others, but I think that I tend to be more visible than a lot of Black Lamas in my tradition. The training in my tradition is so intense, and you have to commit a lot to engaging in the path. And so it's really restrictive in many ways. I do run into other practitioners of color, Black practitioners, practitioners in many other ethnicities and races. However, we're not well represented in spiritual communities and sanghas. So a lot of my work is to provide kind of inspiration and example for practitioners of colors who feel marginalized.
How did you find this work? Or did it find you? Because when you're talking about spirituality, there is a phrase that the teacher will appear when the student is ready.
Right. I came into my practice after many years of social justice work and coming through a really severe period of clinical depression.
Wow.
I wanted to find solutions. I wanted to find strategies to work with my emotional reality, my mental health. Meditation became one of those strategies. From meditation, I was led into Buddhist study, and within Buddhist study, I realized that this was the path. So the path came and met me when I was ready to learn and to listen.
And you said it included very intense training. Once you connected to that, what was the process in becoming a Lama and dedicating yourself to this practice?
So the training in my tradition, which is Tibetan Buddhism, is almost 3.5 years of intensive silent retreat. So that meant actually kind of leaving the world, giving up a lot of things, becoming a temporary monk, entering into seclusion, into cloister with several other retreatants, and then spending almost 3.5 years meditating, practicing, learning the tradition. I couldn't see family or friends, no internet, no phone, no music, so close to 20 hours often of practice a day.
What were some of the feelings that I imagine 3.5 years, you had so many experiences sitting with yourself and listening. What were some of the emotions? I can't imagine that it was all simply this blissful time.
It was rarely blissful.
Okay, wow.
I walked into retreats like full of just like terror, anxiety, and what my experience became was engaging in this whole range of emotion. A lot of these experiences had no context, no narrative, and which gave me insight into how the mind works. I experienced everything, but what started to happen was I stopped taking everything so seriously. So maybe one day I felt rage for some reason. What I began to notice was I stopped believing in that rage so much. I was able to step back and step out of it, to look at it, and to actually allow that emotional state to teach me about my own mind, which was basically that I did not have to react to that rage.
Wow.
And that's when rage starts to teach you, and it started to teach me and to empower me. And it helped me not to show up in spaces because I was pissed, but I had a choice to show up in spaces out of love and compassion, not anger.
What was it like practicing that outside of the retreat space? Because I'm just thinking, in a modern day, I mean, there are days that I feel great, and then I turn on the news, or I see are there ways that you can practice this, like walking in your daily life as well?
Absolutely, because for me, the practice is about spaciousness. So because of my meditative practice, I've been able to cultivate this sense of having a lot of space to experience things in my mind, to experience emotions, to experience perceptions, to experience feelings. So when things come up for me, I don't clamp down on it. I'm not pissed off. We wouldn't say I'm pissed off, but instead the experience becomes I'm experiencing this pissed offness. I'm experiencing this anger. It's just this one experience that I'm having, and there's all this other space around this that I can maneuver around and have happiness kind of encircle and enclose that experience.
How has that changed your social justice work? Because you mentioned you did social justice before Buddhism, and now you are also integrating your Buddhist practice with other social justice initiatives.
It's helped me to make a choice to be in spaces, to be in communities, because I want people to be happy, not because I'm pissed off about inequality. Now, there is an experience of being pissed off and being upset, but that's not why I choose to do the work. I choose to do the work because I want people to be happy, to be liberated, to be fierce, to be happy, to be balanced, to take care of themselves, and not just for those of us who are marginalized and oppressed, but also for those of us who may occupy the space of being the oppressor, because the work of the oppressor comes out of deep dissatisfaction and suffering, and that creates social conditions that perpetuate suffering for the oppressed. So if we start liberating the oppressor, that alleviates some of the suffering. And then for those of us who are marginalized and oppressed, we have to begin to do the work of liberating ourselves from the trauma of oppression, So I say that, like, if we wake up one day and all systematic oppression, has been alleviated, like, we will still be traumatized, and because we experience trauma from oppression, and then we engage in the reproduction of trauma. So we engage in these strategies of healing, which are rooted in love, compassion, patience, kindness, and so forth.
That's a really profound point, because there is such a consequence of this call. I mean, there's exhaustion from doing social justice work, but there's also something that I've even tried to address with other colleagues, where do you make space when you also see people of color being expressed a certain way in the news, or you you are doing the work in your own space, but you're also coming from a tremendous loss and grief. What are some I don't want to give a spoiler alert. We're going to have Rod do a little meditation for us, because I'm like, oh man, that would be like the perfect segue for it. you've come to this understanding, this message. Do you ever experience like a rush to want to share this with people, or are you so rooted in your practice that you just have these moments where you're able to teach people about these things? How do you?
Like in the beginning, I felt a rush. It was like, in Christian traditions, we say spreading the good news.
Yeah.
And I wanted to spread the good news of what I was able to see in my practice. But it's like proselytizing, it's like preaching, and I'm really sensitive to that kind of power and balance in relationships.
Interesting.
And so I shifted my focus to what my tradition actually encourages us to do, which is to live our truth, which is to manifest our truth for people in ways that we're not just out proselytizing and preaching, but just simply living my life, simply being out in communities, being out in protests, being out in marches, and just holding the space, for my own awareness, for my own stillness, but also being very direct. Like I'm still here for a reason. There's still systematic oppression, but at the same time, I don't have to get lost in the reproduction of the violence from that oppression. So I can be free as I am working to free others.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And would you like to show us a little bit of, is there something that you can share, a tool with the audience, so that we can also take that?
Absolutely.
I'm going to switch this. I'm so excited. I can switch the camera angle, or switch this over. Okay, wonderful, Tarad. And I give, like in a lot of gratitude, share the space and give the floor to Rod so he may share with us a tool we can practice at home.
Okay. All right. I would like to share a compassion practice. It's very brief. It's very simple. But I encourage you to take some time with it in your own space and in your own time. So we'll simply begin. You can have your eyes open or closed. And to begin with, I want you to call to mind someone who has been a source of compassion for you, a source of kindness, someone who you have always been able to approach and to be around, and they've been nothing but open, loving, and kind towards you. This person can be a person living or someone who's passed. It can be a deity. It could be your understanding of a God or a saint or Jesus. It can be your favorite pet. So just imagine that this being, it just materializes in front of you. And as this being materializes, imagine that this being is expressing in any way that you want to imagine, perhaps in words, this wish for you to be happy, to be free from suffering, to experience kindness and love and deep well-being. So just imagine that this being is repeating this aspiration, this prayer for you over and over again. And as they're repeating this prayer, imagine that this white, soft, warm light, which represents their compassion, begins to kind of lift and rise from their heart area. And imagine that it begins to spread into your heart center, your heart area. And even while you're doing this, just place your hand on your heart and just feel the receiving of that love from your benefactor. And feel this white, warm light beginning to fill your body. And just tune into what it feels like to be filled up, to be saturated with this wish, with this compassion, this love, this kindness. And feel this kindness, this love, just filling every nook and cranny and crevice in your body, from the very top of your head to the very tiptoes of your to the very ends of your toes. And feel that warmth, feel that kindness, feel that sense of not being alone, but that sense of being held and cared for. Now imagine that your benefactor begins to slowly dissolve into the light, and that light is finally absorbed back into your heart chest. Just open your eyes and just carry that sense of kindness with you throughout the day, throughout the rest of your time.
That was really beautiful.
Thank you.
That was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's a very profound visual. Shout out to my benefactor of compassion. I hope you felt that love because I visualized you very clearly. And thank you so much. This wraps up tonight's evening and episode with our very special guest, Lama Rod Owens. Please visit lamarod.com to find out more information about his practice and also where you can connect with him next. Thank you so much for coming on tonight's episode and for sharing your compassion and your love. I feel really beautiful and that I can really take that, and I hope you take that with you and have a great night.